finally got everything prepared. So we have a whole head of garlic, so it's about 7-8 cloves. If you don't like garlic, use half of that, with some red pepper chopped in it and some hot pepper. Chorizo has a bit of spice to it, so I'm glad I didn't put too much in. I love it, but other people don't. We have 1 large Spanish onion, 6-7 cups of chorizo. We've got a couple of bay leaves, some fresh thyme. You can use dried thyme. We've got fresh parsley. I wouldn't recommend dried parsley. Fresh kale, definitely has to be fresh kale. There is no other, no frozen kale. Even though this is out in the garden and it is December 16th and it was 24 degrees today and it was about 17 degrees last night, I still consider this to be fresh kale. I mean, look at this. It's fabulous. It tastes great. It smells great. And there are no bugs. And then we have our potatoes. These are about the same proportion of potatoes to chorizo. And I'd say almost the same proportion of kale. Kale's a little more, but it's going to cook down. So why don't we get started? And once we get a little bit of heat, and these just sweat for a few minutes. And once they've sweated a few minutes, I add the chorizo. And I let this go for a good 5 minutes. I want to make sure nothing sticks to the bottom. Now, if you're following a recipe, it's probably going to tell you to add the garlic and the potatoes, but the reason I don't add the potatoes is I want this to cook a little longer than it takes those potatoes to get cooked and ready to eat. I don't want them mushy, I don't want them falling apart. I will add the parsley at this point. So now we've got our onion, garlic, pepper, and parsley. And I think we're ready to start adding our stock. As I said, this is turkey stock. The recipe really calls for chicken stock. That's the common way this is made. But turkey stock has a very bold flavor, and it can stand up to these very strong vegetables and meat that we're putting in here. Now you're going to bring this to a boil. And then we're going to turn it down to a simmer after we add the kale and the potatoes later. Now it's probably a good time to add the thyme and the 2 bay leaves. All right, this is just starting to come to a hard simmer. So I think it's time we add our kale. Don't forget, this is a lot like spinach. It's going to cook down quite a bit. now we're going to put in our potatoes. And that's done with the soup. And this is very delicious. Very fulfilling, good for the digestion, and perfect on a winter's night. So there it is. Chorizo kale soup. Well, this soup is done. The potatoes are ready. So now what I do is take a plate that's about the size of the soup pot you're cooking in and place that so that it actually brings, you can see the grease on top. What I'm trying to do is push down the potatoes and the kale and the chorizo so I just have the liquid on top. Makes it much easier to skim. So we have the chilled soup here. And you can see how all this rendered fat is just congealed on top. So with a skimmer, it makes it very easy to just run around, turn it off, and then simply skim it. Because we put that plate in there, all the good stuff is below the plate. So I'm going to remove the plate.